right, guys, I think we'll get going here. Well, welcome everybody to the RoomSuite Modular Deep Dive. My name's Charlie McCarroll. I am a solutions architect for Enterprise on the business development team, and I also have my East Coast counterpart with me here today, Tommy Gay. Tommy, you want to say hi for a second?
Yeah, hey everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. Excited to talk to you about RoomSuite.
Awesome. And Tommy's going to be manning the chat. So if you have any questions as we go ahead and throw them in there. He'll get them answered, or else we'll try to stop at the end of each section. And then there should be some time at the end to answer questions as well. This is going to be set for about an hour today. There's a lot to cover. We'll go fairly quickly here. But I think once we're done here, you should have a pretty good idea of the capabilities of our new RoomSuite modular system. So here we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here, why RoomSuite. We'll talk a little bit about, where RoomSuite kind of fits in with traditional Q-SYS-based systems. And we'll go, in the second section into, RoomSuite, the hardware and the software. Then we'll build some systems, about 3 different systems towards the end, and then you'll see how it sort of scales, for mass deployment, which is really the biggest part of where the RoomSuite product is going here. So we're always talking about places, spaces, and applications at QSC. So we've got, different places, throughout your campuses. You've got, different types of workspaces. You've got your larger rooms, your smaller rooms, all kinds of different things. And those different room types all, need to be served a little bit differently, right? We're showing here, we've got, background music systems, room controls, conferencing. You might have paging, sound reinforcement. All that's different and requires, a unique application. So installation type, you'll see obviously traditional Q-SYS stuff, your very large bespoke rooms, very high impact type spaces. You move up and we also, play very well in the custom rooms that you're very familiar with, where you have, multiple displays, multiple cameras, different types of video routing, network-based audio, all kinds of different things. Again, and then you get sort of into the more standardized spaces, right? Now you're talking about your XL conference room, your large conference room. You may not have a ton of them, but you'll have 1 or 2 on every floor. Again, a place where Q-SYS is really shined. Now you start to get into the smaller type rooms, and these are what we call sort of mass deployment spaces. So, very similar, almost, you would maybe refer to them as like a cookie cutter room, right? Where every floor has X number of them. They're all the same. They're highly used. They still have great technology. But when you have a lot of them, deployment and deployment time starts to become, very important. So here we have our little Q-SYS-O-meter. How do our solutions fit, right? So today you can see the training type rooms, right? You'll see a lot of Q-SYS in training rooms. The break room, multiple displays, inputs, whatever. That's a good spot. You'll see these sort of larger conference room. That's kind of you can use Q-SYS in there, but is it the best possible fit? And then when you get into the really small rooms, it's really hard to justify putting in a full core and designer based system in a 4-person room. And when you try to use, traditional Q-SYS, like right here, we're using an NV32 with a NC90 speakers. So each one of those rooms requires its own programming and setup. You have to uniquely, name all the components in the system. So, when you're trying to mass deploy a lot of these systems, it gets to be a little bit cumbersome or time consuming. Now, these are the normal Q-SYS system components you guys are probably very familiar with: our cores, our switches, video encoders and decoders, cameras, mics, loudspeakers, our third-party partners for, microphones, ceiling mics, and as well as our line of NC series cameras, computes and controllers, as well as, bring your own device setups. And it requires our designer software. You're building a custom, UCI. You're going to tune the room. You're going to, hook it to Reflect for monitoring, and it takes some installation time to do. Here's a standard kind of signal flow there. You guys are very familiar with this. If you're, doing Q-SYS systems, all these different components that have to be laid out and configured. But now we have the RoomSuite Modular System. The key features of RoomSuite are its simplified deployment, right? It's made to deploy in large amounts of rooms at a time, easy to configure, and then easy to both set up and manage through our Reflect software. So here's an intro to RoomSuite. Before I get going, Tommy, were there any questions we need to address?
Nope, not yet.
Perfect. All right, intro to RoomSuite. So here is our RMP100 processor. Now you'll note we do call it a processor instead of a core. It is the kind of heart of the RoomSuite system, and then we have the expander box, which connects back to RoomSuite and allows you connections to table devices, microphones, and then also your inputs, your media inputs as well. So you can see there all the processing on the RMP. You can see it's also got a built-in switch, and we'll kind of go through all the different connections on the back of there. So USB bridging, obviously that's, the heart of these types of systems. We're bridging in our cameras and our microphones to either bring your own device or to a UC compute, either a Zoom or a Teams platform. We've got HDMI I/O, so we've got 2 inputs and 2 outputs. We do have control, so if you need to do RS-232 control over your displays, and then we additionally have motion sensor input there, so you can monitor the occupancy of your room, which will come into play later on. All right. So, like I was mentioning, control of your displays. You can choose CEC, serial, or IP control, as well as whatever the default source is, and that GPIO in order to connect to a occupancy-based sensor. That way you can tell if a room is being used or not. That becomes very important for reporting back to our Reflect cloud platform. These are the aux, and we've got the aux network inputs. That's where you manage the system from. So those are the connections back up to Reflect, how you get into the web UI if you need to make any changes. But as we go along here, you'll see that all of this can be configured very, very easily. And I'll get into that in a minute here. So we've got it. So one of the nice things too is it does have an integrated network switch. So we've got 7 PoE plus port and 1 PoE plus port, and that's going to be used to power our expander. So as you can see, we've got 75 watts. It's class 8 to power the expander. So we assume the QIO VEN4 is an expander. You're going to mount that probably at a table location. You can then use that as your remote media input. So either sending directly to a display or sending to the content input of a UC compute. Both USB-C and HDMI. So obviously they're video inputs, but the USB is also the AV bridge connection. And then these network ports can connect to peripherals at the table. Generally, those are going to be microphones and possibly a touch panel. Here's an example of a bring your own device type setup. So a TSC controller, like we mentioned, on the table, a couple of NMT microphones. You'll plug in the USB-C from your laptop into that expander. And the room processor then connects directly to the display. Very, very easy and simple setup there. Really great for, a simple bring your own device room when you still need some control there. All right, we collaborate the way you want. So it can be set up for either Microsoft Teams or Zoom rooms at setup time. And it can also be set up for BYOD mode. So Teams mode and Zoom mode are going to make available the second page experience. So being able to, control the system via our second page integration with Teams and Zoom. And then, bring your own meeting. That's for everything's going to be run from your laptop. Choose whatever platform you want. So the deployment process is very easy. You just go, it's, very similar to Core Manager in that you just, go to the IP address of the device. Then you can go through a very simple setup. Got our basic network settings there. You'll see the page where you can connect devices and discover them. These are the video inputs and outputs where you can set up EDID and everything. Optimization, so this is where you can do, set up your audio, turn that up and down. Again, it does generate its own UI, but there is some customization there. You can change colors, change the icons a little bit. So there is a level of customization that you do get. But if you are using Q-SYS PoE-based speakers and NMT1 microphones, the system will actually self-optimize for audio. So you just run the optimizer. It'll chirp into the room. You'll hear some speech. The speakers and the microphone levels will all kind of auto adjust, and it makes it a real easy setup. Once that setup is done, it produces it's a JSON file basically with the optimization results in it. So if that's something that you need to print out and deliver just to confirm that that's been done, that is possible. So yeah, one of the real nice features here is auto audio optimization. All right. Any questions up to this point?
Yeah, we have a couple. Is there a document that lists the current supported devices that can be added to these systems via the network ports?
Yeah, so the next thing we're going to get into is peripherals. So we'll list off all the different Q-SYS peripherals, as well as a few third-party peripherals that will work with the device. That's actually coming up in a second here.
We have a question about second page control. I know we're going to get to that here in a little bit, so I'll wait to answer that one.
Okay.
And how are the processors set from the factory? Are they DHCP or static?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm pretty sure they are set for DHCP. I'm almost positive of it.
I would agree with that. When I set my unit up here, it was DHCP and was able to pull an IP address automatically.
Yep, that sounds right to me.
Somebody asked, does room system optimization work with third-party PoE speakers and mics?
Unfortunately, not at this time. Yeah, so everything has to be Q-SYS in order for the optimization to work. We do support third-party Dante microphones, but if you use any third-party device, the optimization can't run. You have to do a manual setup at that point. At least that is the how it works currently.
Yep. And then the question was asked, how do you find the IP address? When you plug it into a display, the IP address is shown on the display when it's booting up. So it's there for a little bit. So as long as you're watching the display, you'll see the IP address show up.
Yep, it's that same screen you get when you start up a core, basically.
Cool. All right.
All righty. All right, so next we'll get into building the system, and I think this might be the part where we address that second page. If not, it's in the scaling up section, but we will get to that, and we'll definitely answer any questions that you have around that. All right, so this is where we're going to start talking about peripherals and limits on peripherals. So as you guys can see, it is powering the expander at 75 watts, so you can plug some stuff into it. But we've got 50 watts basically that we can work with coming out of there, and looks like 130 coming out of the RMP. So one of the cool things during the setup is that as you add devices, it will give you a current wattage. So like this is, these are the devices that are plugged in. You can see right there, it's only using 29 watts out of the 212 available. As you add devices, that'll change. So you do have a really good way of making sure that you don't, ask it for more than it can give. Here's the hardware that works with the room processor, the RMP. So our NL series PoE-based speakers, so our pendants, our in-ceiling, as well as our SB42 bar. So all of those work. You can have up to 4 of the either PoE pendant or ceiling speakers, and up to 2 of the SB42. But you can have all 6. So you can have 2 SB42s and 4 PoE speakers. For whatever reason, you can't have 6 PoE speakers at this time, but that could change in the future. With cameras, it works with all of our NC series cameras, maximum quantity of 2. I think that is a picture of our NC 110, and the 110 actually doesn't work with RoomSuite. So you'll want to get the NC 90 if you want one of our fixed focused EPTZ cameras. And it works, actually the NC 90 is, in my opinion, probably the best camera for RoomSuite. That's just my own personal opinion, but that's what I use on my system. I think it works really well. The TSC series, we can support up to 2 different touch panels on the system. So you've got that capability, and then microphones. So obviously the NMTs, either 3 or 4 of them can be supported. It's 4 total, or 3 plus a ceiling microphone. Dante-based ceiling microphone. I think currently we are supporting, Sennheiser. We're supporting Shure, and I believe we're supporting the Audio Technica. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that we do. There's a drop down where you can select which mic you want. And then you will need to configure those Dante routes, though, using Dante controller. So a little bit of extra stuff when you're using a third-party Dante mic. There's those peripheral limits again, like I was mentioning, 6 total speakers, 2 bars and 3 pendants or ceiling speakers, and then up to 4 NMT ones. As well as, oh yeah, there it is, the AT. So we support the AT, we support the Shures, those model numbers. Oh, looks like the Yamaha's in there as well. That's cool. And then the Sennheiser Team Connects, the 2, and as well as the new M. NC series. There's the old NC 90 at the end there. Our new EPTZ camera. It's got a bunch of really cool AI features, speaker tracking, things like that. Works really well with the system. But you can also use our PTZ cameras. It can do presets, all kinds of different stuff. Works really well. So you remember this? It was the Q-SYS components, the designer software, the cores, all the different things. But now with RoomSuite, just an RMP 100 and a QIO VEN4. That's all you need. All right, so we're going to start getting into a little bit of design here. Right now, we're going to do the first thing we'll do here is a 7-person meeting room. So with a 7-person meeting room, we're going to work on the microphones, the speakers. It's going to be a bring your own device room, cameras with automation, and then we're going to have a TSC on the table there to control the system. System design, very simple. just a room processor and the expander. Our NM series microphone. If you guys aren't familiar, it's our tabletop microphone, 4 different beams. It is PoE powered. You can, it's got a really cool little custom button on it. So if you haven't used it before, it's a great microphone. We're going to go ahead and use our NL series speaker bars. So again, it's a 2-way bar, completely PoE powered. You can mount it. It comes with its own mounts and everything. You can either mount it under, vertically on the sides of a display or horizontally under. So either way, you can do a pair of them if you want to do stereo. They work really well. So we're going to connect certain peripherals to our room processor. We're going to connect all the peripherals at the table to the expander. So the 2 NL series speaker bars, we're going to have those at the front, connect to the room processor. Our NM series microphones, we'll connect those up to the expander at the table. So far, we've got the audio taken care of. Now let's get into the other components. So we can do, again, like we mentioned previously, you can do up to 2 cameras. So add a couple of NC series cameras to the RMP there. We're going to connect the outputs to our displays. We've got our USB-C connected directly to our laptop at the table for our media connection. Starting to build a system here. So now we're going to add in the video component here, which is our laptop connected via USB-C, as well as our displays and our camera. Actually, I went a little too fast there. So guys, I just wanted to pause here and that's it. That's the system. It's just the room processor, the expanders, a couple of microphones, couple of speakers, and a camera. And that's it. That's all you need. It's all connected in, all powered over PoE. Very simple. Very, very simple. All right, now we're going to get into a little bit about control. So as you guys know, we've got Q-SYS Designer software. You can build your own UCIs. You're dragging in components. Very, very, it's not terribly difficult, but it does, consume some time, especially if it's a complicated, UI that you have to build. RoomSuite, on the other hand, is it generates its own based on the devices that you have. So if you've got whatever HDMI inputs you want to make available, you can put on the touch panel. Very, very easy to do. It just builds the sources itself. So you don't really have to do much. If you want to customize it, you can customize it, but you don't have to. There you can see different little levels there. We've got, we can change background colors. Obviously, if you want to, match up, company colors, that's, something that we'd obviously want to allow you to do. So, put in whatever you need there. Choose your mode, and this is going to dictate what that UI looks like, right? So if this is the, BYOD type layout, but if you want to, use Teams or Zoom, that UI is going to look a little bit different as it appears as a second page. So keep your devices in sync. Obviously, mute syncs across the microphone, the touch panel, and the speaker bar. So you mute the system, everything turns red. A conference is in process, everything's green, so people know that they're being heard. Works with both our 7-inch and our 10-inch panel. Like if you guys have noticed, all those panels have LEDs on the side, so you can customize that. But yeah, everything automatically syncs up for mute. Very easy to tell what status is in the room. Again, just adding a little bit of control here. TSC, room sensor there. one last time here. Very simple.
Charlie, we have a couple of questions that came in. Can you change the room mode on the fly?
That is a setup time decision. Yeah, so that's when you're setting up that's pretty much the first decision that you make when you're setting up the device. But no, you can't really change modes while it's in operation.
But I think it's important that they know that their BYOD mode is included in each of those modes. So whether you choose Zoom mode or Teams mode, BYOD is still an option. You can still bring your own PC, plug it into the Ven 4, and then conduct your own meeting. There is USB bridging on the Ven 4, so you'll get all the peripherals and everything.
Yep, that's a good point. That's a good point. So even when you're using it in UC mode, you still do have BYOD capability.
And then someone asked, we use a branded background wallpaper currently for all of our MTRs, which includes our logo and colors on both the TV and touch controller, which will be able to load the same wallpaper to the device to make everything look unified. I think what they're asking is, are you able to load a custom wallpaper to the touch panel?
That's a good question. I think you can. I mean, I know that you can add company logos and things like that. So
You can use a wall. Yeah, I know you can upload. It gives you two places to upload. You can upload a logo, or you can upload a background, or you can upload both. So yes.
Yeah, and I think we might actually take a look at that towards the end here. It shows a little bit more about UI customization, but yeah, no, that's the idea. And making all your UIs similar, regardless of whether they're RoomSuite or whether they're normal Q-SYS, is always very important.
Cool.
Any other questions, Tommy?
Let's see. Can auto preset switching tracking be used with the PTZ cameras and ceiling mic arrays?
So
go ahead.
do we have ACPR built in? Not currently is the answer I'll give there.
Yeah.
So currently it's just going to be a manual process. If you want to change presets, that's going to be on your touch panel. But we have heard people would like
we do
something
support,
like that.
We do support auto framing and actor speaker framing on the NC series cameras. So while it's not ACPR-esque, it is watching your face, and it will track in that instance.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I mentioned before about how I really like to use the NC90 with my system, because it does have those AI framing features. So it's got, group framing, it's got speaker tracking, it's got a tile view. So it really does, add that, AI based, framing to the system without you actually having to do anything. But yeah, in the future would be, cool to see some additional stuff. So we'll stay tuned. Anything else, Tommy?
Nope. Back to you.
All righty. All right. So this last section here on scaling up, these are going to look at some larger type systems that can still be supported by RoomSuite. So this is a large type meeting room we're going to look at here. Instead of doing BYOD, we're going to do in-room UC, integrate control there. You can see, and that's what we'll talk a little bit more about second page. I'm sure there'll be some questions around that. And then content share, or like Tommy mentioned, you can still do BYOD. So this is what it looks like, just without RoomSuite, UC compute connected directly, the controller that comes with the compute, maybe a content connected through the controller or some other way, some sort of optional content sharing, and then standard USB peripherals. Now with the room processor, we can start integrating, Pro AV type equipment into the room. So instead of like we saw in BYOD mode, where the room processor connected directly to the displays, now the UC compute is what's actually going to connect directly to the display. So the Zoom room, the Teams room, and then the RMP will connect into the content share input on the UC compute. So that you can, share that media connection at the table. You're going to then get your USB bridging as well directly from the room processor for the UC compute, which still leaves it open at the table for BYOD. Again, there's that expander that you'll find at the table. content plus BYOD. Again, you can use that connection as well. So we're using the USB connection on both the room processor as well as the expander at this point. And then you can connect Q-SYS peripherals to the expander and the room processor. So there's the video. So again, you can see the expander connected out to the Class 8 PoE connection on the room processor. So we've got AV bridging USB-C from the room processor itself into the compute device, and then the two HDMI outputs of the compute device going directly to the displays, as well as then content coming out from the RMP directly into the UC compute. Now, this is where it gets a little, this is, where you want to pay attention a little bit. So as it sits today, second page is going to be generated in the internal, network on the RMP. Therefore, the connection for it is got to be a connection to the UC compute from the internal, network connections on the RMP. This sort of necessitates that you'd have two LAN connections on your compute device. So one going out to the network and then one receiving second page. This is how it works today. And you'll have, your aux ports connected to your network for monitoring, as well as connecting to Reflect. So again, requires a USB LAN adapter on the UC compute. So you will have to need two network connections in order to receive second page from the RMP processor. There's our system again. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to get back into the customization a little bit. Now, if we want to switch into BYOD mode, we can easily just, go back to our touch panel or to the second page on the Zoom room or the Teams room, and then switch it over to laptop content, and then, have it launch a meeting via USB-C, all on the touch panel. So you do have some options there. Boom, little finger, laptop, bam, share content or start BYOD. Very simple, very intuitive. This is what it would look like on a Teams room compute. So this is sort of what second page experience. So again, trying to adapt the look and feel of a Teams room UI. So it looks a little bit different there. All right, integrated control, UC and AV, content share. All right, now here's our larger room example. So this is a full 14-seat boardroom. This is sort of where I personally think this is kind of where about as big of a room as you're going to support via RoomSuite. So in this example, we're going to show, all 6 NL series speakers connected, all 4 of those NMT1 microphones, that NC90 camera that I love, and the TSC101 10-inch touch panel to control it all. All right, so again, we support up to 4 NMT1s. Each one of those has 4 separate beams, so a lot of pickup there. Full 360 on all of them. You can see it's 8 meters deep at that point. So yeah, I mean, that's what I tell people. It's like a 24-foot, 25-foot room, something like that. Pickup radius is 1 to 3 meters, so you can cover the table pretty well with these NMT1 mics. You can see 4 of them, very well covered there. But we can also support a ceiling microphone. So you can just use a single Dante-based ceiling mic, cover the entire room as well. Now, we get into the monitoring aspect. So if you've used Q-SYS Reflect before, you'll know that it's our monitoring software. We have it divided up into your, organizations, domains, systems. And RoomSuite can also be part of that. So you can monitor a RoomSuite based system just in the same way you can monitor a core based system. But as we stated previously, the RoomSuite system is designed for mass deployments, right? It's not the one-off room. It's I've got 3 or 4 of these on each floor. I've got to do a bunch of them. So we did add some things to actually make that a lot easier. Namely, the fact that we can now do presets for Reflect for mass deployment. So all of those features that I showed you before, the peripherals, the customization of the devices, the customization of the UI, all of those things can be saved now as presets. So instead of having to going through the web UI and setting those up is actually really easy. But if I've got to set up 20 of these, I just want to assign some presets and move on. So that's what we've allowed you to do here. We can expand this out a little bit, but yeah, you can see all of the different settings here that you had can all be saved to a preset. And so that way, whenever a system comes online, you can see it, you can link it up to Reflect and assign those presets. It will inherit all the settings that you have, and the room is up and running. So I mean, that's the whole idea of mass deployment. And the other thing that's a little bit different here is where you sort of need to be on a local network on a Q-SYS system in order to do a firmware update. With RoomSuite, you're able to push firmware updates from Reflect directly. So doing mass firmware updates, you can update 50 rooms in a night if you want to, however you want to do it. So it gives you more flexibility there. It does require a Reflect Plus. So Reflect Plus is our paid tier of Reflect if you want to be able to do that. Pardon me. A little bit more about Reflect here. So this is our space manager. If you haven't seen it before, it's a way of organizing systems on through the Microsoft. It's called the Microsoft Real Estate Core, I think. But it's basically their ontology that allows you to divide your spaces up into buildings, campuses, things like that. We've just adopted that into Reflect, and Space Manager is where you set that all up. Space Manager in itself is really cool because you can just see things on a map, but the actual assigning of systems to spaces has a lot of power moving forward. So this is it. Just by itself, it's a great feature, but what it will enable down the road is even more powerful. This is System Explorer. So this is a way to just kind of very quickly check to see the status of a single room or a bunch of rooms over time. You can see here, like the system reliability graph there, those red lines are times of the day when there was a fault detected. So you can see, over time, not just exactly sort of, a snapshot of the moment. You can see if things have happened, if, maybe you'll see a little red line at, 2 o'clock or something when something rebooted, and then you think, oh, okay, I get what that is. So it helps you a little bit more to know, to kind of see those things visually there. So Q-SYS Connect. So Q-SYS Connect is what we'll talk about here, and that's the way you actually get the second page experience on Zoom and Teams. So again, we'll go back to our UC Compute Room example here. Controller plus second page control. So what we're showing there is either the Zoom controller, the Teams controller that came with the compute device or whatever, and then exposing Q-SYS controls through the room controls button that they have there. So you'll see, most of those controllers are connected via USB, which can be challenging. But you can see there, Q-SYS Connect, it's just some software that we load on the compute device itself, which enables that second page experience. So Q-SYS control software with Zoom, it's a virtual UC controller, so you can use a TSC type panel or the third party one, either way. PC display routed to TSC series, yeah. So that's and then touch. It works just like a normal Zoom controller. Yep. So that only works with Zoom. Just want to make that clear that we can only be a controller over TSC through Zoom. Teams, we still need to use the regular panel. It works for Q-SYS Core Systems and RoomSuite. So if you're using second page, you'll always use that Connect app, and you'll just tell it installation, whether you're installing on a Zoom system or a Teams system, and it will install accordingly. So adding in those TSCs, again, you can do a couple of them if you'd like. Very easy, very straightforward. All right, so let's kind of sum this all up. Our RoomSuite Modular System, RMP 100 plus the QIO VEN4 with Q-SYS peripherals. The idea being we're trying to simplify deployment. We're just trying to make it easier for you to deploy a lot of rooms in a shorter amount of time period than you may need with a full Q-SYS type system. I'm going to make it easy to configure there. Again, easy to walk through the controls, but also easy to just assign presets once you get that set up. And that's the simplified system management part. Through Reflect, assigning presets. Once the installations are completed, room's basically up and running. If you're using Q-SYS microphones and speakers, room optimization for audio, bam, you're up and running. So yeah, integrated audio, video, and control. It's a unified platform, very modular system. Basically allows you to use Pro AV Q-SYS components within smaller rooms. Easy to deploy, maintain, and monitor. A consistent UI across your different spaces, and a lower cost of ownership as it scales because not as much to monitor and not as much training required either. So it looks like I am a minute ahead of schedule here. Good for me. All right, guys. Any questions here? I'm sure you will. We've got 15 minutes left here, so want to make sure we get everything answered that we can. So let's go ahead and.
Yeah, so someone's asking more about how Q-SYS Connect works.
Sure. So Q-SYS Connect. So you guys might be aware of our, second page application that's bundled up whenever you design, you download Designer, you'll see it. Second page experience for Teams. That's all getting replaced with the Q-SYS Connect app. So Q-SYS Connect is going to be sort of your all-encompassing app, whether you're using a core system or a RoomSuite. When it comes to Zoom, it acts a little bit differently. So the Connect software loads on a Zoom compute, and then you're actually able to use the Zoom control interface on a TSC panel. So that's kind of one of the things there. I don't know, and Tommy, I don't know if you know this, but when you're talking about RoomSuite, I know that's meant to be working with that, but I'm not sure exactly what the status of it is today. If you're using it with a core system, you can use multiple panels mirrored so that you can have multiple interfaces for your Zoom room. With Teams, though, it's still basically loading second page. So the Zoom Connect app is going to just load the same file onto the Teams compute. You'll link it up similar to how you did before with the IP address, and then it sends the Teams second page experience to the controller, and so you have Q-SYS type controls when you hit the Room Controls button on the Teams panel.
Cool.
But yeah,
Awesome.
it just replaces the existing stuff.
And coming soon. So Q-SYS Connect, while you might, if you're familiar with the core and you've downloaded 10.2, you might have seen Q-SYS Connect pop up in your inventory. But you notice that we don't yet have a Q-SYS Connect app. It is coming, so to be released soon. Um, can the system integrate privacy shades and have UI control of them?
Ooh, that's a good question. So as it stands today, we don't have third party control of stuff like that, but that would be a great addition for the future.
Yeah, we'll definitely mention that next time we speak to product management. Price point and release dates. Also, will demo units be available? While I can't speak to price points, it is released. It is shipping to customers, so feel free to reach out to your Q-SYS rep and request a demo, and reach out for pricing and availability. But it is shipping. It is released, and yeah.
Yep, should be on your price sheet.
When do you recommend a core system over RoomSuite and vice versa? That's a good question.
That is a really good question. So I kind of feel like the dividing line is room size. I mean, that's kind of how I room size and complication, right? So if you need anything that requires, a plugin, right? So like plugins are going to be very much a Q-SYS world core type situation. So anytime you need to do that, you're going to want to go with that kind of system. I think when you're talking about RoomSuite Modular, like the two examples that we showed there, the 7-person conference room and the 14-person conference room, you can almost think of those as like the top and the bottom of where you would, kind of put this, right? So it's, good for a 7-person room, 7-person room, and also up to about 14 people. So that's sort of the sweet spot where, you still can have, pro AV components, really good quality video, really good quality audio, but not have to, put a full core system in with all the programming and everything that goes along with it. So I feel like that's sort of the sweet spot. But
Yeah, I think like you mentioned at the beginning, RoomSuite is really for those rooms that need repeatability, something where you're going to do, let's say, 50 of the same type of room, or even 10, 20, 50, 100. You're going to deploy a bunch of these types of rooms where you might normally put in like a Logi system or a Poly system or something like that. This brings those repeatable rooms into the Q-SYS ecosystem now. So it's those rooms that are just going to be repetitive, and you're putting in the same amount of speakers and the same microphones. And like Charlie mentioned, with Reflect, that's where RoomSuite becomes extremely powerful, because you really only have to set things up once, and then that preset, if you're using the same amount of speakers, the same microphones, you deploy that preset, and your deployment time went from 30 minutes per room, or whatever it is to install all the equipment, to 10 seconds, because you push the preset and you're done. The room's ready to go. You might have to go set up some camera presets and push the room optimization, but the deployment time in Reflect is where RoomSuite becomes extremely powerful. Can RoomSuite communicate with a core system for privacy shade control? That answer is no. RoomSuite is its own kind of dedicated system at the moment, so cannot communicate to cores, and cores can't communicate to it at the moment. And then someone said, is the GPIO on the rear of the room suite active to trigger window shades? No, the GPIO is only currently for occupancy sensors. Some great questions in here.
yeah, I'm sorry, I was reading something. What was it again, Tommy?
So someone was asking if GPIO on the rear of the room suite was able to do the trigger, the shades, and currently
Yeah.
it's only for occupancy.
Yep. Currently, the RS-232 and the GPIO are just for displays and the occupancy sensor. Occupancy sensor, though, is actually something we didn't really talk about here very much. But the big sort of gain that you get from adding the occupancy sensor is once you start to get into like room booking and you start to look into, you're starting to like connect calendars up through Reflect as time goes on. You're looking at things like releasing a room when if no one shows up, or being able to auto book a room if a person goes into it. Those are things that we're looking at for the future, but a lot of that is enabled by having an occupancy sensor in the room, which is we're seeing more and more common, and not only occupancy sensors, but as time goes on, they're more like environmental sensors, right? So you're monitoring air quality, and you're monitoring actual people count in the room, not just whether or not the room's occupied, but how many are in there. You're going to see some cool stuff like that as time goes on from Q-SYS. So stay tuned for that.
All right, well, that's all the questions that have come in. Anybody else have any other questions? You got a few more minutes, and if not, we'll give you some time back. So somebody asked, so currently, just to kind of broadly answer the question, we don't support external, other than displays, and maybe a projector if you're using a projector. We don't support any other third-party equipment. So you can't control your shades, you can't control screens, things like that at the moment. The room suite is bundled as it is.
Yeah, and it doesn't say we can't add like a QIO. Somebody's asking if you can add QIO devices. The only QIO that it supports is the Ven 4.
Mhm.
That's the only expansion device that the RoomSuite system is currently supporting. But again, RoomSuite, has a really good use case for what it does, but it's not going to be perfect for everything, right? So if you need additional things like, you want to control room shades or lighting, or additional things that, isn't available currently in RoomSuite, you'll still want to stick with your good old core systems.
Mhm.
So
All right. Well, I think that's about all the questions. So we will give everybody about 5 minutes back to their day. Thank you for joining us. And this has been recorded, so you should be getting an email shortly with the recording. And yeah, we look forward to touching base with you.
yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys for joining. If you need to know any more about RoomSuite, obviously reach out to your reps, reach out to your AEs. So yeah, thank you for joining. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.